Because 16th century authors writing about him gave him this image. That's why. These people in the 16th century were known as the Rajputs. I'm still in the keep it in the bag, keep it clean phase. I don't really care whether it conforms to the Sharia or not. Morphe brushes are here. This is a Sarabhai versus Sarabhai reference. Morphe is to brushes what Faris Shafi is to Desi rap. Really up there with the stars. I'll explain. I love these brushes. This is not a sponsor thing. Yep. 5 times defeating the Mongol army. I have not done a very good job of, as you can see. Wages are directly proportional to prices. Because just look at this look. I'm really obsessed. There is 3 dots after width. Most favorite characters in Indian history. AK. Not Anil Kapoor. I've made a complete fool of myself. Hello and welcome to Eyeshadow Etihaas. I am Ruchika Sharma. For those of you who have hopped onto the channel for the first time, Eyeshadow Etihaas is basically where I bring together my 2 loves for eyeshadow and for Etihaas, which is history. And each episode you will see me basically mixing together these eyeshadows in a nice blend like this one. And while I do this, I'll be talking about a particular topic on history. And for those of you who have no idea who I am, I teach history for a living and I have a few more credentials that have been listed in the description box. Also in the description box are a list of sources that you can go ahead and read if whatever I speak here sparks your curiosity on the topic, or in case you want to fact check everything that I speak over here. Now that all that is sorted, I cannot wait to introduce to you the new series that we are debuting at Eyeshadow Etihaas. And the series is called Keeping Up With series. There is 3 dots after with. You know, like the name of the topic comes after with. The Keeping Up With series was basically started keeping in mind the fact that a huge part of Eyeshadow Etihaas was actually started to lend some academic information of sorts on popular contestations of history, which are so rife in the subcontinent today. And Keeping Up With will basically take a topic which is hotly debated in the subcontinent, like our man AA, Aurangzeb Alamgir, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, so on and so forth, where there are plenty of opinions but very little actual contextualization in history, very little academic info. And that's exactly what I will be doing in this debut episode of the Keeping Up With series. I will be talking about one of my most favorite characters in Indian history, a man called AK, not Anil Kapoor, Alauddin Khalji, also known in his Sanskrit inscription as Dilli Naresh Alauddino. Sultan Alauddin Khalji is a curious character in the subcontinent, and everyone in the subcontinent who knows anything about the subcontinent has an opinion on Alauddin Khalji. The cumulative opinion on Alauddin Khalji, however, is pure and unadulterated hate. Why is hating AK everybody's favorite pastime in the subcontinent, you guys? Is beyond me. What is it that AK did in history that created so much hate around his persona? Also, is this hate something which is a recent 20th, 21st century phenomenon in the subcontinent? Or is it something that has been a part of the subcontinent's history? And while I discuss Alauddin Khalji, I will be creating this particular look. This is a sort of a bluish, greenish, gradients rising from 1 to 10 over here kind of a look. As you can see, I've created this entire look with these brushes. And I really love the look. And I love these brushes. They're just so smooth. Like, I would have never been able to have this blend if it was not for Morphe brushes. This is not a sponsor thing. Any of you who don't know what Morphe brushes are. Morphe is to brushes what Faris Shafi is to Desi rap. Really up there with the stars. And since I constantly feel that there is so much history happening in the channel and there is very little of the eyeshadow, so I will introduce to you the palette that I'm going to use today. This is the first time I'm going to use this palette. This has a cake liner. Cake liner is basically a liner in a solid form. You have to just wet your brush with a setting spray and put on a cake liner, which is basically something that I have done on camera for the first time. And as you can see, I've made a complete fool of myself by applying this cake liner. This look was going so well. I don't know why I still did it. But you know what they say, right? YOLO. You only live once. Chale phir. Incidentally, YOLO is a good summary of what Khalji replied to Qazi Mughisuddin, an Islamic jurist at the court of Khalji, who claimed that almost all of Khalji's policies so far were basically against the Sharia, which is the Islamic law. To which Khalji replied in a pretty badass manner, I order what I conceive to be good for the state and whatever appears expedient to me at the time. I don't really care whether it conforms to the Sharia or not. Powerful stuff, eh? Clearly, Alauddin Khalji saw himself as a statesman much more than a man of religion. Weirdly, however, in the popular parlance of the subcontinent today, it is Khalji's religious identity that gets highlighted quite a bit and gets him way too much of a hate. Why? Because 16th century authors writing about him gave him this image. That's why. And why did they do that? Because Khalji curbed the power of corrupt and contumacious intermediaries or landed elites, basically middlemen, and their successors had these anti-Khalji texts written. Curiously, these people in the 16th century were known as the Rajputs, and that is the short answer. The long answer starts with Khalji's revenue system, which was a pretty avant-garde system, not only because it was based on past averages, but also because it was the first to demand revenue in cash. Fret not, for I will explain both in great detail. So, in order to levy the revenue demand, Khalji ordered the land to be measured and then the yield to be estimated per biswa. Now, biswa here is basically a unit of land measurement. So, a piece of land could be 240 biswa, so on and so forth, just like we have hectares or acres today. So, how exactly was the yield estimated per biswa? Based on past averages. Basically, the estimated yield in the year 1298 AD would be the yield in 1297 AD plus yield in 1296 AD plus the yield in 1295 AD divided by 3. Basically, an average of 3 or 4 or 5 preceding years. So the estimated yield is basically then the average of the preceding years. And the thing with averages is that the more the number of the preceding years included, the higher the chance of getting a closer, more accurate estimate of the current year. And that's exactly how a lot of stats is done today as well, you guys. For example, take GDP growth rates. Now, a lot of GDP growth estimate is based on past GDP growth rate. But coming back to Khalji's averages, once the average was calculated per unit of land or per biswa, that became the yield estimate for the current year and was then multiplied by the area of land under consideration giving us the total produce. The revenue demand was levied on this particular figure and was demanded in cash, which not only monetized the economy but also lay ground for a calculative and statistical approach for fixing revenue demand, which clearly wasn't the case before. This system would actually be used mostly uninterruptedly till the 20th century in the subcontinent. Afghan Emperor Sher Shah Sur or Sher Shah Suri, Mughal Emperor Akbar more or less adopted this particular system with slight modifications of their own. However, as smart as the system was, it was still a regressive system. Since the revenue demanded was half of the total produce and it was demanded uniformly, which is 50% from everyone in the subcontinent who were taxpayers. And yet, Khaljis Panjarist, a man writing after Khalji's death, a person by the name of Ziauddin Barni, which some of you might know, has his grave in the Nizamuddin Auliya Dargah complex. It's a small grave. It's not even properly covered, I think. It just has red bricks and mortar on it. That's Barni's grave. But he died a poor man and wanted to be buried next to Nizamuddin Auliya, hence the grave. But coming back to the point, Barni, in his Tarikh-e-Firozshahi, this book that he had written for Firoz Shah Tughlaq, also included the histories of rulers before Tughlaq, therefore Alauddin Khalji's history as well, tells us that the Sultan ensured that the burden of the strong should not fall upon the weak, which, no marks for guessing, is clearly an exaggeration, because the weak over here, the peasants, would also have to pay 50% of the produce. But Barni's statement is alluding more to the fact that the strong, that is, the landed magnates, could no longer levy a host of extra cesses that they used to previously. So Khalji ensured, according to Ziauddin Barni, that cesses such as Kismat-e-Khoti, Muqaddami, Hukuk-e-Khoti, etc. were all abolished, and over and above the Kharaj, which is the land tax, the elites were also to pay Ghari, which is the house tax, and Charai, which is the grazing tax. But earlier, as Barni informs us, these landed elites lived a life of plenty. But Khalji's strict control of their privileges greatly affected their wealthy lifestyle. But who exactly were these landed elites? Known in scholarly texts as intermediaries, these were privileged landlords who often acted as middlemen between the state and the peasant. Labeled variously as khots, muqaddams, chaudharis, these people often collected taxes from the peasant over and above the stipulated revenue in the form of the cesses mentioned. The Muqaddami, the Hukuk-e-Khoti, the Kismat-e-Khoti, so on and so forth. This might just be best work of blending I have ever done on camera. Now, even if I F up the liner, it's still going to look nice, I think. But Khalji's hard no clearly deeply angered these group of people, who eventually had to be pacified in the subsequent rule of Ghiyas Tughlaq, who abolished Ghari and Charai. And you see, this restored a lot of the powers of these intermediaries. But why did Khalji feel the need to curb the power of these intermediaries? Like any astute statesman, our man Khalji realized that with the intermediaries lay a good amount of untapped surplus that ideally the state should realize. But why did Khalji need the surplus? Well, for one, all states require surplus. to pay the state paraphernalia, invest in infrastructure, help the marginalized, etc. But more than most, Khalji needed this surplus since it was the key to his grand plan. What grand plan, you ask? I'll explain. This is a Sarabhai versus Sarabhai reference. Zilli Naresh, that is Alauddin Khalji, was nothing if not an ambitious ruler. And his campaigns in Mabar, Tilang, Chittor, Gujarat were swift and strong. Wow, you guys. Many of these kingdoms basically fell like ninepins in front of Alauddin Khalji with little or no resistance. A lot of these kingdoms were made tributaries, basically those that pay a tribute to a state they recognize to be above them, and a few were annexed and brought into the growing Sultanate of Delhi, with Khalji's governors installed at these areas. Know that this was basically the first time that the Delhi Sultan was able to make such a swift and long-lasting inroads to areas as far-flung as Mabar. And most of this is squarely related to Khalji's revenue system. But how? The answer lies in his extraction of the lion's share of the surplus, which helped Khalji maintain a huge and well-equipped army. This is where the monetization of the economy helped too. In order to pay the revenue demand in cash, the peasants would have to sell their produce in the markets. Now these markets were closely regulated by our man Khalji via price controls. Now prices of all commodities from wheat to a horse were fixed by the Sultan and were generally fixed on the lower side. Now this may have worked against the market forces, but it worked really well for the Sultan and also for the peasant to some extent. Now first of all, it gave a kind of a surety to all the peasants of being able to sell their produce in the markets at a certain price. A kind of an MSP, a minimum support price if you will. Secondly, fixing low prices really brought down the wages. Bit of an economics lesson here. Wages are directly proportional to prices. So if the prices go up, wages go up. And when the prices come down, the wages come down. Which for Khalji meant that he could now afford a cheaper army. An army at a lower wage, which gave him even more of a room to accommodate more and more soldiers in his army and be able to afford provisions, weapons and equipment for the army. And while this army may have largely been instituted for Khalji's personal expansive ambitions, it also helped Khalji defend the subcontinent against the Mongols, who, if you remember, had wreaked havoc in Iran and Iraq in the 13th and 14th century, forcing a mass exodus of settled populations there to the subcontinent. We discussed this in episode 7. I'll link the video here. And by the 14th century, the Mongol army was knocking at the subcontinent's door. And Khalji, like any visionary ruler, made all the preparations in advance, which was not only having a formidable army, but also to build a strong fortress called Siri, which lay between Tarikh-e-Firozshahi, which is the old city of Delhi, largely what is called as Mehruli today, the area around the Qutub complex, and Shehr-e-Nau, or the new city, Kilokhari, which was established in the middle of the 13th century. At Siri, Khalji thwarted the Mongol invasions of 1303, 1305 and 1306 AD. And before this, twice more in 1298 and 1299 AD. Yep, 5 times defeating the Mongol army, the fierceness of which was eulogized far and wide. By defending the subcontinent, Khilji seems to have preserved also the course of history that the subcontinent has today. Wonder how it would be like today if Khalji had been defeated and the Mongols had taken over. I completely forgot to brush my eyebrows today. They look really bad, so I'm just going to quickly do that step. This is a step that you can do at any point of time, so it shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, so coming back to the point, the counterfactual history of if Alauddin Khalji would have been defeated by the Mongols. Frankly, maybe nothing drastic would have happened, since the Mongols were mainly interested in creating tributary ties in settled lands, agricultural lands, but still how things would have progressed from there on is anybody's guess. But what it did do for Khalji was to create his status as a formidable ruler. So why the hate? Well, it's clear, isn't it? Khalji made many enemies by capturing their kingdoms in his expansion campaigns, and a lot more by curbing their privileges. Clearly, these intermediaries could not rise against Khalji, the Mongol defeater, who Barni basically talks about as somebody who was so powerful in his kingdom that literally no one dare make any babble or noise against the Sultan. And these intermediaries that could not make any babble or noise against Alauddin Khalji for their falling fortunes were the ancestors of the 16th century Rajputs. And it was these Rajputs in the 16th century who carried forward the stories of Khalji changing the fate of their landed elite ancestors and had these legends penned in. 2 books are quite important. One is, of course, Malik Muhammad Jaisi's Padmavat. The other is Narayan Das's Chittai Varta. While the first text is absolutely famous now in the subcontinent, thanks to the cringe fest of a movie, Padmavat was patronized by Rajput chieftain Raja Jagatdeva, while the other one was funded by a Purbiya Rajput warlord, Silhadi Purbiya, who actually worked variously for the Malwa kingdom at Mandu and also the Gujarat Sultanate under Bahadur Shah. Now, both these books have one thing in common. Khalji is a debaucherous villain who is always lusting after other women, and this is why he's annexing kingdoms of Deogir in Chittai Varta and the kingdom of Chittor in Padmavat. Needless to say, most of these texts are legends more than facts. But they do carve an image of Khalji which has stuck in popular memory. And this is primarily because counter texts of a similar nature were never really written for Alauddin Khalji in the 16th century. And also because the British in the 19th century, as well as the 20th century, took a keen interest for fanning such an image of the Muslim barbaric ruler, and hence the current hate. But that's exactly what I'm here for. To dispel fictional narratives of hate for events, monuments, people in history, and contextualizing, my favorite words back, contextualizing it in historical narratives. And I'll be sure to bring many such examples in this series, in the hope that popular contestations get enriched a lot more by history than by myth. And that is all that I have for you today. Please note there is a list of sources mentioned in the description box that you can go ahead and check out if any of this sparked your curiosity on Alauddin Khalji and his policies, or if you just wanted to fact check everything that I said. And before you just walk away, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel, and do let me know what is it that you would like me to talk about in the next video. And any other feedback is also welcome. You can also tell me that my cake liner is bad, or if you have any tips on how to apply a cake liner properly, just let me know.